U.S. President Joe Biden will travel to Rome in January to meet with Pope Francis and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. The trip is expected to take place shortly before his term in office comes to an end. White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre said in a statement that Mr. Biden will also meet with Italian President Sergio Mattarella during the visit from January 9 to 12. The statement adds that Mr. Biden's meeting with the Pope will be to discuss efforts to advance peace around the world, indicating his meeting with Ms. Meloni revolves around important challenges facing the world. Mr. Biden's presidency ends on January 20, when President-elect Donald Trump will be inaugurated. In the meantime, a Trump-backed Republican spending bill has failed in the U.S. House of Representatives. The revised spending plan failed to reach the two-thirds majority needed in the lower chamber of Congress on Thursday night, defying the president-elect. After the bill failed by 174 votes to 235, Republican House Speaker Mike Johnson said he would come up with another solution on Friday before government funding expires at midnight. The House rejected the spending package, which was hastily assembled by Republican leaders after Mr. Trump and billionaire Elon Musk scuttled a prior bipartisan deal. Opposing Republicans objected because they are against increases in government spending, while Democrats voted against it out of fear the extra borrowing would be used to give tax cuts to the wealthy.
House Republicans have abandoned that bipartisan agreement that we entered into in good faith. A bill that House Republicans negotiated. Gave us your word that we were going to move forward together on behalf of the American people. It was a Republican drafted bill that was posted by House Republicans. And then one or two puppet masters weigh in, and the extreme MAGA Republicans decide to do the bidding of the wealthy, the well-off, the well-connected, millionaires and billionaires, not working class people. We are going to continue to fight for everyday Americans. That is why we are voting no on this bill, and to stop this reckless, regressive, and reactionary Republican shutdown, vote no.
On this vote, the yeas are 174, the nays are 235, one voting present, two-thirds not being in the affirmative. The rules are not suspended and the bill is not passed.
Was negotiated in a bipartisan fashion. Both parties agreed to these terms, and that's what's on the floor right now. The only change in this legislation is that we are going to push the debt limit to January 30th of 2027. We will push it beyond that, or to that time point, and that will allow us to do the important work of governing in the new Congress. I hope that this vote passes tonight. We will send it to the Senate. We will extend funding, and we'll come back, and we will have the America First agenda come in roaring in January for the American people.
Elsewhere now, Australia has announced provision of $118 million in funding support to the Solomon Islands to expand its police force so the Pacific Islands nation can reduce reliance on external partners over time. This was relayed by Prime Minister Anthony Albanese. The Solomon Islands has hosted a small Chinese police presence since 2022 after the pro-Beijing Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare struck a security pact with Beijing, raising concern in Australia and Washington. Reacting to the move, China said no country should regard Pacific Island countries as its own backyard.
My government is proud to make a significant investment in the police force of the Solomon Islands to ensure that they can continue to take primary responsibility for security in the Solomons. It's also the case that today we reinforce Prime Minister Manala's comment that Australia is the security partner of choice. This investment over 4 years will be guided by the Solomon Islands priorities. The package will improve funding, training and infrastructure support to grow the Royal Solomon Islands Police Force in a sustainable manner. This partnership will strengthen the Solomon Islands' domestic security, but it will also enhance its ability to contribute to regional stability. We expect that the Solomon Islands, of course, as a sovereign nation, they have some measures in place, and we expect that to continue. But we also expect that as a result of this agreement, what we've done is make sure that Australia remains a security partner of choice. And I've consistently said, as a member of the Pacific Island Forum, that what we're about is making sure that the Pacific family look after our own security. And that is something that we've done through a range of bilateral agreements, but we've also done through our multilateral agreements with the Pacific Policing Initiative as well, that's been so well received.
Elsewhere, the Iraqi military says it has sent back nearly 2,000 Syrian soldiers to their homeland. It comes after they had sought refuge in Iraq during the advance of rebel forces that toppled former President Bashar al-Assad earlier this month. According to a statement from the Iraqi military, the Syrian soldiers were returned at their request and entered via a border crossing between Iraq and Syria. The statement adds that the soldiers' weapons remained in the possession of the Iraqi Defense Ministry and would be handed over to a new Syrian government once formed. The Iraqi military also noted that the Syrian troops were returned after writing pledges asking to be included in an amnesty issued by the new Syrian authorities. We're looking at the moments family members of inmates at a prison in southern Mexico clashed with riot police as they attempted to break into a prison where their relatives were being held. The unrest followed a riot inside the prison which resulted in at least 2 deaths. According to authorities, government forces were met with gunfire and vandalism while executing a transfer order for 2 violent inmates. However, rumors circulated that the death toll from the unrest was higher. This forced families of the inmates who noted that they were not given information to break into the prison over concerns and fears for their loved ones who are currently being detained. And after more than 10 years following the disappearance of Malaysian Airlines flight MH370, the country has agreed in principle to resume the search for the wreckage of the missing passenger jet. In March 2014, the flight vanished while on its way to Beijing from the Malaysian capital, Kuala Lumpur. The Boeing 777 was carrying 227 passengers and 12 crew members on board.
Of December 2024, that was last Friday, the Cabinet has agreed in principle to accept the proposal from Ocean Infinity United Kingdom to proceed with seabed search operations to locate the wreckage of flight MH370 in a new area estimated at 15,000 square kilometers in the southern Indian Ocean. This endeavor will be based on the no fine, no fee principle. Under this principle, the Malaysian government would not be required to pay Ocean Infinity any fees unless the wreckage of the aircraft is discovered. The proposed new search area, identified by Ocean Infinity, is based on the latest information and data analysis conducted by experts and researchers. The Ministry of Transport is currently negotiating the terms and conditions of the agreement with Ocean Infinity, which is expected to be finalized in early 2025. These decisions reflect the Malaysian government's commitment to continuing the search operation and providing closure for the families of MH370 passengers.
At least 4 people have been killed following a gas tank explosion in the western Indian city of Jaipur. The disaster also left dozens injured. Firefighters are currently working to extinguish flames from burning vehicles and retrieve bodies. According to officials, the blast occurred in the early hours of today when a truck collided with a gas tanker. More tragic news. At least 1 child has been killed after a knife-wielding assailant attacked a teacher and 8 pupils at a Croatian primary school. The Interior Ministry said in a statement that a 19-year-old man entered the school at about 9:50 a.m. and with a sharp object, using it to wound a teacher and several children. The attacker, identified by local media as a former student of the school, was detained by police. Croatian Prime Minister Andrej Plenković said the government was horrified by the news of the incident. Now, people in storm-ravaged Mayotte Island are imploring French President Emmanuel Macron to do more to help as he toured the overseas territory where scores are feared dead in the rubble left by Cyclone Chido. In Pamandzi, an angry crowd booed and shouted at the president, asking for more aid to be delivered. Officials in France's poorest overseas territory have only been able to confirm 31 fatalities more than 5 days after the cyclone, but some have said that they fear thousands could have been killed. Many areas remain inaccessible. Heavy rain in the capital, Mamoudzou, and other areas has worsened the plight of thousands of people whose shantytown dwellings were flattened. Mr. Macron's office said he would stay on the islands overnight and visit more neighborhoods on Friday. His government has been accused by opposition politicians of neglecting Mayotte, and several residents of impoverished areas say that they had not received any help since Chido struck. Staying in France, President Emmanuel Macron has praised Gisèle Pelicot as a trailblazer for women for the strength she showed in the mass rape trial of her husband and 50 other men. President Macron, who paid tribute to her social media platform X, said her dignity and courage moved and inspired France and the world, indicating she was a guide for women to speak up and to fight. Her ex-husband, 72-year-old Dominique Pelicot, was sentenced to 20 years in jail for aggravated rape after confessing to drugging her for almost a decade and recruiting dozens of men to rape her while she lay unconscious in bed. The brave and courageous Gisèle always wore a symbolic Aboriginal scarf which served as a hug from the other side of the planet. The scarf was a gift from Australia's Older Women's Network, whose members were inspired by Miss Pelicot's bravery and wanted to give her something as a symbol of their support and gratitude. As expected, the whole of Europe is in shock and has been reacting to the rape trial. Joining us now is the DW's Arthur Sullivan for more. Hello, Arthur. Great to see you. What can you tell us about the verdict in the trial handed down this week?
So there were 51 men on trial for rape and sexual assault in France in the extraordinary case of Gisèle Pelicot, and all of them were found guilty one way or another according to different levels this week. So the main perpetrator, that's her husband Dominique Pelicot, he was found guilty of repeatedly drugging and raping his wife over several years, and of inviting dozens of men to come into their family home and do likewise, all critically without the victim's knowledge or consent. Now, Dominique Pelicot, the victim's former husband, was given the maximum penalty of 20 years in prison this week. Now, he's in his 70s, which means that he may well spend the rest of his life in prison. And of the other 50 defendants tried alongside him, they were all found guilty on various levels, despite many claiming that they believed the victim was a willing participant and that she had given consent, which she absolutely had not. Now, those defendants were given a range of sentences from 3 years in some cases to 15 years. And those sentences, it's important to point out, were shorter than the length many prosecutors had sought. And the victim's family and some others criticised the length of some of those sentences. And many of the convicted rapists' legal teams have actually suggested they may appeal. Then they have 10 days to do so.
Why has this case been of such significance in France and across Europe?
Well, this case has really had an utterly transformative effect on perceptions around rape, sexual assault, victims and perpetrators. And the details, as many of your viewers will know, are truly shocking. So the main perpetrator, Dominique Pellico, now sentenced to those maximum 20 years, he drugged his wife completely without her consent or knowledge. It was a really appalling crime. And the victim's bravery and courage and her conduct throughout the trial has really seen her become a feminist icon and has inspired victims of sexual assault and rape all around the world. And the real key fact here was that she insisted that the trial take place in public, even though she was encouraged and, in fact, to some extent, there was a legal requirement almost to hold it in private and behind closed doors. But she wanted everything as open as possible. That would mean that the perpetrators are named, their actions fully revealed. And as a result of that decision, a huge national discussion and indeed international discussion on the topic of rape has taken place. So she had to fight legally just to allow the trial to be in public. And with the details of the case known, it has really upended perceptions. It has shown us that there is no typical rapist. You know, the dozens of convicted rapists here worked in a range of professions. They were in various ages, from their 20s right up to their 70s. Many of them had apparently happy family lives. And the ringleader was the man who the victim, Giselle Pellico, trusted absolutely, someone she had been married to for decades and whom she thought she had a happy marriage with. And perhaps most shockingly, the dozens of perpetrators all came from within a relatively short distance from where the victim lived, again illustrating the pervasiveness of rape and sexual assault within society. Now, the key point again really is that throughout the trial, Giselle Pellico emphasised that she wanted to transfer the often misplaced shame which victims of rape and sexual assault sometimes feel after they've been the victims to those who absolutely deserve it, the perpetrators. And by the way she has dealt with this trial, she has done that and has inspired victims of sexual assault and rape all around the world.
Right, and this will not be the first rape case being reported in France or Europe for that matter. How does this set a precedent for the judicial system in the country?
Well, the case, as I said, has led to major soul-searching in France and beyond around rape and sexual assault, and particularly the law when it comes to that. So the really critical concept and word here is consent. So French criminal law defines rape as a penetrative act or an oral sex act committed on someone using, quote, violence, coercion, threat or surprise. It makes no clear mention of the need for consent. And prosecutors must prove the intention to rape to secure a guilty verdict. And of course, this means that in the many situations where a victim freezes or feels powerless, as is extremely common, then it's much harder to secure a conviction. And France has been reluctant to move away from this definition. But this case has really led to an examination of the topic, and critics of the existing law says the current situation puts far too much scrutiny on the victim's behaviour, and their words indeed, rather than the accused. Now, there are moves underway by a group in the French Parliament to work on a bill which would change the legal definition of rape, with the focus going back to consent at the centre of any potential new law. Now, it's important to say that consent-based rape law already exists in several European countries, and that has been, more common since the rise of the feminist Me Too movement from 2017 on. But the Pellico case has proven every bit as transformative as that movement. And the fact that there may now be new laws in France and elsewhere is a testament to Giselle Pellico's courage and her determination to help her appalling experience guide other victims.
Right. Thanks again, Arthur.